Okay. Great. We are now recording. Welcome, everyone, to the Solana Community Validator discussion, August 31st, 2023. We've got a pretty busy agenda today. So first, we're going to do some validator updates. Then Ben Hawkins from the Solana Foundation, head of staking, is here to talk about some upcoming changes to the delegation program, essentially give his thoughts and look for feedback from the community. We'll talk a little bit about educational workshops coming up, some of the validator events at Breakpoint, specifically MEV Camp and Block 0. I think Brian Long is going to talk a bit about Block 0. And then if there's some time at the end, we can also talk some more about governance. I know that some of the government's chat has been moved to the Solana forums, so Michael might be introducing that if we have time. We'll see how the call goes. All right, so first of all, validator updates for Mainnet. 1.14.24 is still the recommended version for Mainnet, but the Solana Labs team has requested 10% of stake to adopt 1.1610. Almost 10% has adopted it now, which is great. People have been finding some issues. So the main one being a general protection fault. This is essentially a memory access issue that can cause a crash, but the general protection fault is typically not going to be happening in Rust code, right? Because the whole design of Rust is to make memory management sort of like a core principle of the language, right? You can't access memory that you have not previously allocated in a safe manner. So this general protection fault is likely in a library that is outside of the Rust code base, meaning it is not a liveness issue. It's not an issue with the core Rust code. It's probably like a downstream dependency that has this problem. Anyway, I bring this up just to say that it's a good example of the testing process in action. There's a lot of steps that led up to 10% of stake being adopted on Mainnet. But once that 10% was adopting 1.16.10, Labs noticed and identified this issue, and we are holding the progression of 1.16.10 until we have a root cause analysis. So if you're interested in this issue, you can track the bug here on this GitHub issue. Let me pop it open. So 32940, I'll put this in the chat. And there is a Discord channel that is discussing this, debug GPF 116. Put that in there as well. There we go. So if you're curious, that's where to track it. But just again, to reiterate, the rollout is going to be halted until we get down to root cause of this issue. So rest assured, we're not going to push through the update until we kind of know what's going on with this GPF. Any questions about that? Okay, cool. Testnet is pretty much gone through the downgrade and upgrade cycle for our rollout process. So 1.16.10 is recommended on Testnet. Testnet has been fully downgraded and upgraded. So as far as the testnet testing process goes, we are basically done, just waiting for the 1.16 rollout to happen on Mainnet before testnet adopts 1.17. So that'll be the next step. But nothing for testnet operators to do right now except upgrade to 1.16.10 if you have not done so already. All right, any questions about Mainnet testnet updates? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, now I'm going to hand it off to Ben to talk about some upcoming SFDP changes.
All right. So this is all with like a big asterisk here. These are the kind of proposed changes, and it is subject to the feedback we get from you guys, and and then we can just change it. But this is overall to give you an idea of where the SFDP program is headed. So I'll just kind of go over these bullet points. So the biggest change first is we're going to time box a part of the support, and so that time box is we're going to be covering the sole cost for voting for a limited time. Right now, I think we're thinking around a year. So the goal is where you'll have a participant will have around a year to see, to try to get past that break-even point with us recognizing that voting costs is one of those biggest barriers to entry to, and it's the biggest risk. So we want to take that that risk away for a limited time, and then, and help people start their journey on the validator. That will also apply. So when we do this switch, every person who's currently in the SFDP or gets in between now and then, or will, when the program starts, they will also be getting vote coverage. So this isn't just for new participants, it will be for existing participants, meaning everyone will kind of currently in the program will have, have the same start and end date on that. But then new people, let's say they come in 6 months later, they'll have a year starting from the day they start on Mainnet. And then I'll answer questions, I think, at the end. If someone has sort of a burning question, I could maybe take a pause. But for now, I'll kind of hope to go through this and catch them at the end. And then the other big major change right now, everyone's kind of aware, basically we take the whole pot of, SOL that the foundation has in this program, we split it evenly. There are, like, I guess assuming you're getting the bonus delegation. And instead of that bonus delegation being split evenly, the goal will be to have basically stake matching. That could be either 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. We haven't decided yet, and that might change as the program is live. But we do anticipate that a majority, probably above 75% of the SOL that's in the pool will be used for this matching program. So that means the part that is split evenly will likely be significantly less than the amount that's split evenly right now. There still will be some, so there is some, like, right when you first start on Mainnet, you will have some stake from the foundation to get you on the leader slot or the leader schedule, ideally each epoch. And but beyond that, we expect most of it to be through matching. And this is sort of kind of in the goal of allowing the community, just the general, anybody who owns SOL, whether it be stake pools, individual stakers, to have a fairly strong say of where should the foundation stake their SOL. And so we're going to be looking to the community with these changes to help guide, where should we be staking our SOL, and instead of just that even split. And then with that, there's going to be more stringent performance requirements on Mainnet. So right now, I think they're pretty forgiving. You can have a significant amount of downtime each epoch on Mainnet and still get your full delegation. We're going to look to move that quite a bit closer to the cluster average. We haven't determined, it's like probably within some percentage points, probably not more than 5, but that's probably the biggest thing that might change from now and when it goes live. But I think like vote credits, specifically when is what we have in mind. We're talking about more specific stringent requirements. Yeah, so I think right now or Tim, do you know what the current percent is for the vote credits?
Sorry, I was muted. I don't know, but it's pretty forgiving. It's something like 300. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's I think it's something around that 70 to 75% range. That's probably going to be close, basically if you're less than 5% of the cluster average, we'll probably destake for that epoch. We may look to smooth some of these out, especially skip rate. We know that can be quite a bit of high variance, especially at low stake. So we'll be looking to make sure we can intake or account for variance by looking at perhaps 5 epoch averages as as more time goes on. And then so as far as testnet, the testnet requirements will remain the same. So we'll still ask you to run your testnet node. We'll probably have similar. I don't think we're looking to make those way more stringent. Perhaps they'll become more, but generally we'll probably keep the testnet requirements the same. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the set of upcoming changes. If there's any questions on specifics, I'm happy to answer them now.
There's a couple questions in chat. So the first one being essentially just a comment on skip rate. You can't tell exactly why a block was skipped. So I guess the question is around how is skip rate a good metric if you can't tell why a block was skipped? Yeah. So, and I think skip rate will be quite a it still might be more stringent, but I think that it'll be important that that the variance of just if you're running a node and it's properly configured,
any, we should be not penalizing anybody running into the normal level of variance. But if you have like a 0% skip rate across the last 400 slots that you had, that's, that just means you're not running a validator, like, or just, improperly configured. So we're not going to be really looking as closely as we will be in vote credits on skip rate, but it's still important to make sure people are actually blocks. So in this low variance, in the high variance case with skip rate, we'll probably just be looking at basically no penalty until there's like 200, 300, 400 slots that we could take an average from. That's probably the one that we'll have to, like, I won't have specifics on exactly how that will be until a bit further down the road. But I do want to make sure we're not unnecessarily penalizing like just the high variance of skip rate. And there's, like you mentioned, there sometimes it is completely out of your control. But if it is, if your validator is properly configured, out of 400 slots, you should be getting a big chunk of those.
And there's a question about matching external stake to SFDP. Just explain in more detail what you mean by that.
Oh yeah, and I guess something I didn't mention, which I intended to, there is going to be a cap. Right now, we're thinking about 100K. So like the first, if we do a 2-to-1 match, the first 50K SOL will be matched for a total match from us for 100K. And so if you have a lot more than that, you won't get any additional support from the foundation. So I do want to be clear there. So if you're already doing extremely well, we're not going to be giving you a huge boost in stake, or someone who is managed to gain more stake over time. There won't be like any big like foundation whales or validators getting way more than anybody else. Did that answer the question?
I'm not sure. It was a question in chat. So who's that? Alexander, if you have more follow-ups, let us know. Brian, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just had a question with regards to the vote costs and the external staking. Does this mean that effectively somebody coming into the program initially, let's say they have 100 SOL staked with them, self-stake, if the foundation will match 100 and then they'll cover the voting costs? So does that mean they're immediately in profit from the very beginning?
I would imagine if you only had 100 stake, we would match that 2-to-1 at least under the current plan. So that'd be like 300 stake total. I doubt that would cover server costs, but from an on-chain perspective, yeah, they would be in profit. But there are some real-world costs, of course. So yeah, and that's the idea of this change, is to allow people, at least from the on-chain standpoint, take a low-risk venture into seeing, can they collect stake, can they convince people to run it. Can they convince liquid staking providers, that they're doing the right things, that they're in a sufficiently decentralized network? There's a bunch of different incentives that other stakers offer that we're hoping that this program will amplify.
And if I can follow up again, are you kind of keeping an eye on whether this is going to push people to 0% so they get more external stake, but then the quality of stake is not going to be as good for those operators, right? Because they're 0%, so they could still be running losses for a year, for example.
I missed the first part of that.
I'm wondering if you're keeping an eye on whether any of these changes are going to push the SFDP participants to run 0% commission.
That I don't think we're not going to make like I think that is one strategy amongst many, but there are, like, if you look at liquid staking providers, they don't only stake to 0%, so there are other ways to attract stake. Yeah, and then I mean, like, one could also just buy their own huge pile of SOL and get that match, right? There are many ways in which people can attract stake, and they do right now. So this is more to reflect kind of how non SFDP participants kind of work and operate. So it'll be like, it's much closer to those same set of incentives, but just an amplification up to a limit.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm gonna answer some of these questions that are in chat. I got a chance to read over them. Let's see, 1 second, let's go through. From Zantetsu, if people have relationships with VCs and know owns a lot of SOL, they will indeed have more luck in this program. That is just how it is. And I think a very, very small minority of people will be in that position. But that is, I mean, there's definitely no getting around it, that if someone has a way to collect a bunch of stake from a single person, we'll amplify that up to, our 100K. And I think I remember earlier reading, Michael had asked, what's the current amount of stake? So it's right now, everybody gets 48,000. So basically, if someone is able to attract stake, they can kind of get up to double what they currently have right now. And that's kind of the idea. It's not a huge change. It's not like they can get to 200, 300, 400 from us. It is, at most a doubling. And some people will get less if they don't have any external stake and aren't able to attract like liquid staking. Like if you charge 10% commission, liquid staking providers are far less likely to stake with you. And so you might have a trouble doing that. But it's still like, if you have 10% commission and you haven't managed to attract outside stake, whether that be from your VC friend, if you have one, or just your own, then we'll still match that.
Ben, sorry if I can interrupt. That at Ben was not meant to you. That's part of a discussion where someone, I'm sorry, that was confusing. Someone else is proposing that, the idea that matching will then cause people who can acquire a third-party stake, lots of third-party stake, to then just double down their sort of benefit. They're already getting third-party stake, and now they're going to double it. And my point was only that that's kind of what you guys want. That's the definition of success of a validator. They're attracting third-party stake. So this is incentivizing that process. But obviously it should be limited, because once someone gets 200,000 third-party stake, now they've got 200,000 of the testnet stake, or of your stake also. Probably there has to be some real thought put into some kind of curve or something like that to ensure that you're helping people who are actively acquiring other stake to make that stake more effective for themselves, but not just being there so that if I know I'm going to start a validator and I have someone that's willing to give me 50K stake, and I know that ahead of time, I should just join this program, and then their stake is actually 100K stake for me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, and
a lot of fun.
That makes sense. And I think if I recall, when Ben had asked that question, Ben Coverston, I think I hadn't mentioned that there's going to be a cap. So I think that massively changes how one would think about the program. I think the cap is an important piece. The goal really is to help validators start their journey on Solana. Like, we're going to really reduce that on-chain risk for that year. And then hopefully after a year, the goal is, they've collected enough stake to remain profitable and, and have a lasting presence on Solana, and hopefully a growing presence on Solana. It will, for some people that, there may have to engage with the community more, or like I said, or like kind of been mentioned, if you do have, your own soul or know people with soul, I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to take advantage of the program. I think that's well within the kind of the rule set of proof of stake networks. All right, let me make sure if I missed any other questions. When will the changes take effect? Good question. Huge asterisk here, because especially just depends on feedback and stuff. But I would love to have this ready to go, or at a minimum announced at a specific date by the end of the year. There is still a possibility that beginning of the year is when it might rolls out. I would try to avoid a very, very end of the year turnout. So kind of like if it's almost ready, then we might push it to into January. So the goal, if all goes swimmingly, into November is a good target for us. But yeah, huge asterisk there. I don't want to commit to a specific date, but that should at least give you guys it's unlikely to be earlier than that. I hope that's helpful. Oh yeah, and another thing I guess that goes along with this as part of this too is we will be using some of the SOL currently in the program to also be making deposits into liquid staking protocols to kind of have more, allow them to have more of a say. Where does where should the foundation SOL be delegated? It won't just be us, through this SFDP program, but also allowing stake pools to have some support from us as well, and the validators do. And by same way, I mean just as they will get support, they won't have the same rules and the same, like they're just not valid. It's a different incentive setup. Any questions I missed? Oh, will y'all have a max commission? There is a max commission right now. It is possible that will be one of the things that become more stringent. It's unlikely that we're going to make it go like way lower. It's a possible change. We've gone back and forth on it. I think that's still a TBD. It's very unlikely to be less than 7%, and it very well may just change as it's there. But it's something I would love feedback from people in the community or in the SFDP program, people outside of the program. I would love to hear what the community would think. But right now, we're leaning towards no change, with still that leaving open the possibility that might go as low as 7%. Looks like Frank is asking match self-stake and third-party stake, third-party SFDP stake. I'm not sure what you mean by third-party SFDP stake, but self-stake will be treated the same as any external stake. And yeah, anything that's not from us will be matched. What will happen after 1 year? After a year, we will no longer send SOL directly to your identity account. So like as this, that first part covers SOL, cover the SOL cost for voting for a limited time for SFDP participants. So that will actually look like we will directly deposit SOL based on your vote credits into your identity account to cover any of the SOL costs. So you'll probably have to fund the beginning of it, but once you've funded your identity account, that should remain about steady over the course of the year. And then at the end of that year, you will no longer get SOL deposits into that identity account, and that part of the support will be time boxed, and we'll just stop. Brian asks, you mentioned 75% are in place to discuss the other 25%. I think the 75% was me talking about the requirements of vote credits. I think the current requirements are like 75% of the possible vote credits of the highest person. That's what I meant by 75%. So that's the requirements for vote credits are not that stringent right now. So we'd be kind of making that to be closer to the actual cluster average. And that's just to make sure people are making sure their mainnet validator has really good live uptime, and just high performance as you'd expect for a mainnet validator. And Amir, good question. What about the match stake? The match stake, that'll be indefinite. That's just part of the program. No current plans, at least like when we release this, to have that be time boxed. We could always change the SFDP program at any time. Hopefully we'd be able to give plenty of heads up. But the current way we're looking at it is that it will be like an indefinite support. Because ultimately the foundation SOL will be staked. And so that's how we're looking to, we're going to be looking at the community. Now, what could change is if we have a lot of very successful validators within the program, and a lot of people are hitting that max 100K stake from us, there is a world in which the that match, that 2-to-1 ratio goes down, or the cap goes down. We'll have to see, right? Like right now, there isn't a huge, there aren't a large amount of participants that would be maxed out if we just did it at, just looked at how much external stake everyone has. But where was I going with that? I kind of lost my train of thought there, sorry. All right, Michael's asking, I'm glad that answered the question, Amir. Michael's asking, any plans in the future to require specific validator clients for eligibility? I would say most likely we might see those specific requirements on testnet. I don't think at the moment we would want to have those requirements, but we'll see. We'll make that open, but for now aren't any plans to do that. But on testnet, there very well may be. I think that wraps up the questions.
Yeah, we should probably move along, but I think a good place to keep discussing this if people have more questions is the delegation program channel in Discord. So if there's any other follow-ups, that would be the place to go. Thank you, Ben. Okay, a couple more things I want to touch on. There'll be a workshop on September 6th. I was planning a workshop last week, but unfortunately got a little overbooked there. So September 6th, I'm planning to do a workshop on proper SSH setup for validators and setting up a sole user. In past workshops, I've kind of glossed over this point, but I want to focus on it a bit more because I think it's a pretty good security point of interest for validator operators. So hoping people to attend that one Wednesday, September 6th at 1700 UTC. And as always, it'll be posted on YouTube. Here is the playlist. A copy. Well, I'll put that in the notes in a minute. Any questions on the educational workshops? No. Any future suggestions for topics or ideas, or even if people have thoughts about this one, let me know. Love to get some more feedback and community involvement on these. All right, so Breakpoint is coming up. Planning on just keeping this slide in every validator discussion until Breakpoint to remind people and get people excited. It is happening October 30th to November 3rd in Amsterdam. Tickets just went up in price, unfortunately, but hope to see a lot of you there. Two key things I want to point out. MEV Camp will be October 29th and Block Zero will be October 30th. For MEV Camp, there's now a sign up. So I'll put this in the chat. Notice here that MEV Camp is on the 29th and Breakpoint starts October 30th. So if you're interested in MEV Camp, be sure to get there early. It's all day on the 29th and the registration for Breakpoint is the 30th. So validators will probably want to get there a day early to check these things out. There's not a lot more details on MEV Camp other than the sign up. So more details to come, but if you're interested, definitely go to that link and check it out. And now Block Zero. Block Zero is on the 30th. Sorry, I didn't include that in the slide. So this is the registration day for Breakpoint, but it starts at 9 a.m., I believe. So again, if you're interested in Block Zero, make sure to get there early, probably the day before at least, because the Block Zero events will be going on all day. The sign up link is here. Let me put that in Slack. Or sorry, not Slack, in the chat. And there are details about the event at this link. I will put that in chat as well. And Brian, is there more you wanted to say about Block Zero?
Let's see. Well, just to encourage everybody to attend, we think this is going to be a very important day for validators. And we've got an ambitious item on the agenda. Michael Hubbard's here too. Michael, feel free to unmute and kind of join in. But what we're envisioning is that we spend a 2 or 3 hour block of time with a really deep dive into validator governance. And the goal is to walk out of there with something that looks like a proposal. So this won't be a day of just sitting back and listening to a bunch of boring speakers. This will be a day to roll up your sleeves, be validators, get engaged, and make stuff happen. There's also going to be a lot of fun too. So plenty of time to network, plenty of time to have fun. It is technically the day before Breakpoint. So you do need to show up early, and we'll be starting like right away on the 30th, early in the morning. So Michael, do you have anything to add, or Chris Remus or Max Sherwood?
Yeah, nothing much to add. I think you covered it. Obviously, governance won't be the only topic. I think one of the more interesting ones, but personally, I'm a bit biased. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. We'll do some workshops, break out into groups, discussing some of the key questions and trying to bring that back together. And come up with a plan. So if you want to be a part of that, please participate, please show up.
Yeah, hell yeah, yeah. So I think that's it.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Hope to see a lot of you there. Last Breakpoint, we had a sort of informal validator meetup, but I think this will be just way, way better. And kudos to Brian and Michael and Gito and Chris Remus and all the people who have gone into making this possible. I think it's great to have a validator specific event at Breakpoint. So super cool. All right. So some notes on governance. As I mentioned last time, the Solana Staking Alliance is where sort of the day-to-day discussion about governance is happening. I'll drop this Discord link. Well, I'll put it in there in a second after I can exit out of this. But the Discord here is where you go to chat about governance. Michael Hubbard recently started some threads in the Solana forum for governance to have a more sort of formalized place to put some thoughts after they've gotten a little bit of time to be discussed and formalized in the Solana Staking Alliance Discord. So if you want to take an active role in governance and you want to participate every day, Solana Staking Alliance is probably the place to go. If you're curious what the thoughts are after they've had a little bit of time to, be debated and talked about in this Discord, then the forum is probably the place to go. Anything you want to add to that, Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, essentially, as Tim said, most of the conversation is happening on the Discord, and it might seem a little redundant now to also have the forum, and I just want to explain that a little bit. Essentially, the Discord is kind of a meta conversation, what governance itself should be, and at some point, the actual substance of what is being governed has to be discussed somewhere, which is kind of, I think, what the forum is envisaged to be, and as also being kind of a more finalized proposal form. So the Discord is really kind of debate, conversation, back and forth, discussing the intricate details of the points. And then the forum is trying to kind of say, okay, everyone can kind of say, okay, this is my line in the sand, this is my opinion. And then we kind of say, okay, this is now the proposal that is being formed out of that consensus. And then that goes to a vote, which is kind of the next stage that we have to get to at some point. So at this point, it is a bit redundant because we're doing the meta discussion, what is governance on Discord? And then that itself has to be part of governance. In future, the Discord would really be more about kind of what should governance be, but the forum would be like this, a specific proposal, change the inflation rate, change staking rewards, implement this proposal. So I think that would kind of diverge a little bit in future. I'm also hoping that the forum might be a way to get a bit more visibility, because you don't have to join the Discord. You can just click a link and read, even if you don't want to contribute.
Any thoughts, questions there about governance or even just the process of where we're talking about these things?
Yeah, and I think at some point we need to kind of figure out some form of actually voting on some of these things. So.
Yeah, that's a good.
Sorry,
I'm
having audio problems. I have to use my phone. Yeah, sorry, I was typing while you're saying some of that, so I hope what I'm saying right now isn't just completely already answered by what you just said. But I'll say it again. I think it's premature to have this go to different communication forums. I don't know if that's what you're doing here by introducing this forum.solana.com, but we're already having a hard time getting much traction in the one forum where it's discussed, and obviously splitting it up just makes it that much harder to track discussions in multiple places. It's going to make it even harder to have a core group of people that are discussing this in one place. And I also don't understand why we picked forum.solana.com. That's owned by Solana Foundation, which is not a community thing. So why wouldn't the goal be to keep as much of this in places that have less encumbrance by specific organizations? So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, so I think I answered some of the first part previously. So I think ultimately the usage of those two avenues are kind of going to diverge a bit. But the forum is kind of a place for more finalized, formulated proposals, whereas the Discord is more kind of the back and forth, nitty-gritty debate. The question of why we're using forum.solana.com, it is managed by the foundation, and ultimately it has to be managed by someone. And I think the foundation is well suited to be doing that, to be hosting that. You know, it's a Web 2 platform, so someone's going to have to host the database or pay for the domain. I think that, you know, the foundation, it's kind of in their scope of doing that. And also because that same forum is already being used for SRFCs, which I think is kind of a precursor in some ways to something that will go to governance. And then SIMDs are in GitHub, so I don't know how that fits in, but yeah. Solana.com, I think, is also run by Foundation.
Yeah,
the
forum
foundation
runs
runs
.com and .org.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add one added benefit there is that the audience is a little bigger on the forum, right? It's also where a lot of developers discuss things outside of Validator ecosystem. So, you know, it would hopefully add some other eyes to the discussions that maybe you wouldn't get in the Discord.
Yeah, another added benefit with that is that we can actually post a link. So please excuse the dog. You can share a direct link to a particular topic. So that's kind of, the Discord is more like, I see it as kind of like an internal kind of just discussion, more informal place. And then the forum is where also we should discourage, I think, people from just posting like quick kind of noisy replies and really focus on thought out. You know, everyone has like one post to give like their final input on like, this is where I stand on this topic. And then somehow from that we form a consensus and say, okay, this is the proposal, now we vote. But yeah, also because of the distraction thing, the forum, I think, is also something where we can then on social media, and I encourage people to maybe share this a bit as well and suggest to your followers or other people who might be interested, like, here's a link to a specific conversation. Please participate, share your thoughts, because we want more people to engage and participate.
Awesome. Any other questions or thoughts from Michael or the group at large?
Maybe just add a comment to support to the direction that Ben Hawkins is running with the delegation program. It does put more of an incentive for validators to think as business operators and get out there and hustle. And ultimately, that's good. That's good for the network. So I appreciate the direction you're going. I imagine you might have 1 or 2 iterations before you're done with this, but so far it looks pretty good to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Well, if there's no other topics for discussion, we'll end it there. Thank you, everybody. And I'm very pleased to see all these people attending this week. Please attend in future calls. It's great to see a more active validator set. So as always, 2 weeks from now, we'll have the next call, same time as today. So thanks, everyone. See you next week or in 2 weeks. Bye.